I want to talk to you a little bit about this 6-speed transmission that some of you are taking apart now. The rest of you will be taking it apart. You're going to notice some things that are familiar as you look at this. You know, as you look at these different transmissions, it's going to start making more sense to you, and you're going to start recognizing duplications of design. You know, things like the way the pressure control system works and the way the pump works, it's the same on all of them, really. The way the pressure control solenoids work to control shifts and shift field, it's the same on all of them, pretty much. So once you've learned one, it gets easier to understand the next one that comes online. You know, so we've had these 6 speeds out here for, well, since the mid 2000s, and now there are 8 speeds and 9 speeds, and we'll have 10 speeds. But you're going to find when you start looking at these that they work in a very similar fashion throughout. So looking at this transmission right now, there's some things that are familiar to you already. There are how many sets of multiple disc clutches in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 of them were used to transmit torque. 2 of them were used to hold something from turning. So they're steels that bind to the case. So it's very similar to what you saw in the 6T 70s, and where you had 2 that were used to transmit torque and 3 were used to hold something from turning. But again, 5 sets of clutches. And they're named in a similar fashion too, you'll notice that. The 1, 2, 3, 4 clutch, used in first, second, third, and fourth. So you know that's going to be applied in those gears. The 3, 5 reverse clutch, you know it's going to be applied in third, fifth, and reverse. And your 2, 6 clutch, which is going to hold something from turning. Your 4, 5, 6 clutch, which is part of that turbine assembly, so that's going to transmit torque to a component. Here's where things are going to get a little different though. The planetary gear set arrangement on this transmission is a little different from what you've seen in the past. And that's because it's using 2 planetary gear sets, but one is a compound planetary gear set. So I guess before we go on to the planetary gear sets, let's try to get a look at what these clutches are doing. There's another picture here I want to find. That makes it a little easier to see. And I'm not finding it. Yeah, that's the one I'm looking for. So here's our, what was this, the 1, 2, 3, 4 clutch? You guys have this opened up by any chance? You can open it up to keep me honest here. So torque is going to come into our turbine shaft or input shaft assembly. That's going to be transferring torque to this housing, which is where that 4, 5, 6 clutch is. It is also transferring torque to this component here, which is the input internal gear. So this is one of the planetary gear sets that we have on this transmission. It's called the input planetary gear set. So that suggests to you that it's going to be an input for torque coming into the transmission. And it is, in fact. It's connected to the turbine shaft. So when our turbine shaft is rotating, we're going to be transferring torque to the input internal gear. That's going to transfer torque to the input carrier pinion gears. The input carrier pinion gears are going to walk around the held input sun gear. The input sun gear is splined to the stator shaft on this. So that's kind of different. This input sun gear is splined to the case basically all the time. So all of our torque into the transmission is going to be going through that input planetary gear set. The input carrier is going to transfer torque to this housing. The input carrier is the output. Whenever the carrier is an output, we get what? Reduction. So we're going to get some mechanical advantage there. Right here. Notice that these clutches, which are, I think, are our 1, 2, 3, 4 clutches. are splined to this housing, which if you follow it, comes all the way down, looking at the color now, to this sun gear. This is our second planetary gear set. It's a compound planetary gear set. A Ravenel planetary gear set is the term for that. That's unique. So this is different than what you've seen in the other transmissions that you've looked at. So this housing is going to transfer torque to that sun gear, that output carrier rear sun gear. So this is called the output carrier. We have an input planetary gear set and an output planetary gear set. The output planetary gear set has a output sun gear rear, and it has an output sun gear front. It also has a planetary gear set with multiple pinion gears that are connected as one piece. I'm going to show you another picture of that in a minute so you can see that. And then we have our output internal gear, which is in mesh with the planetary, both the output rear outer planetary gears and the output front planetary gears. So our planetary gears here, we have an output rear inner planetary pinion gears, and we have an output rear outer planetary pinion gears. So we're going to revisit that again in a second here. So in first gear, we have these 1, 2, 3, 4 clutches applied, and our low reverse clutch is applied for first gear engine braking. But for first gear without engine braking, this clutch is released. And here's where some things are going to look similar to you, because we're transferring torque from this planetary gear set, from the input planetary gear set, to the output sun gear, the rear output sun gear. That's going to transfer torque to our rear output inner pinion gears, which is then going to transfer torque to our rear output outer pinion gears, and then to our rear output internal gear for first gear. But here's the thing that's kind of unique. The carrier, in this case, is being held by the low roller clutch, the low reverse roller clutch. So the carrier is being held for first gear. What does that say to you guys? Because what if, you know, remembering what I've told you in the past, if the carrier is being held, what do we get? What about that? Here's why that doesn't happen. Let me show you the other picture.
I think I found the guide.
You found it?
Yeah, I was looking for 6L, and it's just a 6-speed rear-wheel drive.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
I was like, it's not here. So then I went to go look at yours to see if I could just find a disassembly. And then I realized what I was doing.
Again, the guide is really good, guys, for understanding how this system works. So here's our two planetary gear sets. Planetary gear sets, and yet we're showing what? But they're really only two, because this is one planetary gear set. So what I'd like you to notice is the rear output sun gear, which is the purple one, remember? That's the one we're transferring torque to in first gear, is going to transfer torque to our rear output inner pinion gears, right? Carrier is being held by that low reverse clutch, the low roller clutch. The rear output inner pinion gears are going to transfer torque to the rear output outer pinion gears, which are then going to transfer torque to our rear output internal gear, which is connected to our output shaft for first gear. So the carrier is being held, but we're not getting reverse because why? So we're transferring torque to this sun gear. That's going to cause these pinion gears to rotate in the reverse direction, right? Did everyone see that? So the inner pinion gears are going to transfer torque to the outer pinion gears and again change direction again, so that now we're moving in a forward direction. And those are going to transfer torque to the internal gear in a forward direction. So we got some reduction from our input planetary gear set, and we got some reduction from our rear output planetary gear set to get our 4-point-something to 1 reduction for first gear. So whenever you hold the carrier, you get reverse. This is one of those statements that is true, except for when it isn't, in which case it won't be. And that's because of the type of carrier we're using here, the Ravenel gear set. This arrangement, by the way, has a name as well. And that is, wow, this stuff is not coming off, man, is the lapel TA gear set. Peltier, nice French name for you. That's the name of this gear arrangement, where you have a input planetary gear set with a fixed sun gear, and you have a compound planetary gear set, which is a Ravenel gear set in the rear, connected together, is a Le Peltier gear set, which was developed around 1991. So the Europeans were using it before GM was. When GM came out with the 6-speed, they started using it. So here's your first gear power flow. Again, our input shaft coming in, transferring torque to the input internal gear, to the carrier pinion gears, which walk around the held input sun gear, transferring torque to this housing. Our 1, 2, 3, 4 clutches are applied, and they transfer torque down to our output sun gear, to our planetary gear sets, to our internal gear, and then to the output shaft. So all of the torque to the output shaft is going to come through those 2 internal gears, the output internal gears, which are connected together. But we can get different ratios because what you'll notice when you looked at those planetary gear sets is that the sun gears are different diameters. So I guess you can see it right here. There's our rear output sun gear, here's our front output sun gear. So they're different diameters, so which one we transfer torque to is going to change the ratio that we transmit to our output internal gear. And we don't have engine braking because we're using a one-way clutch until we apply the low and reverse clutch, which will provide us with some engine braking. So what's different in second gear, guys? So in second gear, again, our turbine shaft, we're transferring torque into our turbine shaft, into the input internal gear, to the input carrier pinion gears, which walk around the sun gear, so that's no different. We get our gear reduction there. Our 1, 2, 3, 4 clutch is still applied, so we're transferring torque to our rear output sun gears still. And we're transferring torque to our pinion gears, but what's different now is, well, you guys tell me, what is different now? Of first gear. If you have your books open, if you have this book open, you can look at it closer, perhaps, moving back and forth. So first gear, we got a reduction here, and we got some reduction over here with our rear output planetary gear set. But what happened in second gear? What did we do different? Speak up, Zach. You're right.
1, 2, 3, 4 clutch is applied.
Yep.
2, 6 clutch is applied.
All right, so that's what's different, isn't it? We applied the 2/6 clutch, which is doing what? Yes. follow the dotted line. What is it holding? Austin? Okay, the output sun gear, right? The output front, output sun gear. So we're holding that now. So now our torque is, our carrier is going to be forced to walk around that sun gear and transfer torque to our internal gear. Do we have engine braking in this gear? Remember the general rule I gave you guys earlier? Well, what does the low reverse clutch do? Are we using the low reverse clutch in second gear? Are we using the low reverse roller clutch in second gear? The one-way clutch?
Yeah.
We are.
Because that's what, when the G.
We were using it in first gear. It was holding the output carrier, but are we using it in second gear? Here's your little miniature range reference chart there, guys.
Yeah, we are.
We are.
Now we're not. Reverse.
Low clutch brag. It's not used. So the rule I gave you guys was if you're using a one-way clutch to move the vehicle forward, then you will not have engine braking unless you apply something else that does the same thing as that one-way clutch. So in this case, we're not using a one-way clutch. So will we have engine braking? Will we be able to transfer torque back up to the engine? You want to go like this? Yes. Yeah, you will be able to, because we're not using a one-way clutch. So this thing has engine braking throughout its gear ranges. And that's true with the 6T, by the way, as well. What happened? What's different in third gear? So obviously, the 1, 2, 3, 4 clutch remained applied. It's telling you that. But what did we do different?
Third gear, 3-5 reverse, clutch is applied, and the
Good.
G6 is released.
Good. Because we need to have some stuff rotating here, so we can't be holding stuff from turning. Now, third gear is not a 1-to-1 ratio in this transmission. Although, if you look at this for a second, the 1, 2, 3, 4 clutches are applied, so they're transferring torque to the rear output sun gear. And the 3-5 reverse clutches are applied, so they're transferring torque to what? The front output sun gear. So these two components are rotating in the same direction and at the same speed because they're connected to the same component. They're going to drive our carriers, our pinion gears in the same direction, which are not going to be able to rotate. So they're going to kind of just act as wedges and transfer torque to our internal gear in the same direction and at the same speed. So what ratio did I just describe? But I just told you we don't have 1-to-1 in it.
Is it just less than 1-to-1?
Why is it less than 1-to-1? Well, no, it's not less. Less than would be overdrive, right?
No, it's just a little bit more than
1-to-1. Why would it be more than 1-to-1? Why do we have some reduction? Or less than, I guess less than 1-to-1 works. John? Why do we have some reduction? You know it. Tap again.
Is it because nothing's being held?
Well, nothing is being held, but we're getting 1-to-1 through this planetary gear set, and yet our overall reduction is not 1-to-1.
Because you said we had like, 2 planetary gear sets.
Okay. So what's actually happening then?
This one's driving the second planetary gear set.
This one? Which one?
The first planetary gear set.
What do we call that?
Um, the input.
The input. Yeah, the input. So we're getting some reductions through the input planetary gear. So even though we're getting 1-to-1 out of our output planetary gear set, we still have that reduction through the input planetary gear set. And in fourth gear, what do we do different? We disengaged a set of clutches.
The 3-5 reverse clutches are disengaged and the 4-5-6 clutches are.
Good. Yeah, good. We applied the 3-5-6 clutches. So we're still transferring torque with the 1-2-3-4 clutches to our rear output sun gear. But now we're also transferring torque because we applied the 4-5-6 clutches. You can see that we're going to transfer torque to this hub, which is coming back and is splined to our output carrier assembly. So we're rotating the output carrier assembly slower than actually, hang on a second. Is it slower? No, it's actually faster. The output carrier is turning faster than the output sun gear, because that's not going through the input planetary gear set. So we bumped up our ratio a little bit, get a little less reduction. So what do you think? Can you figure out power flow on any transmission at this point, just by looking at your blue books, looking at what's applied and what isn't applied? Look at what's connected to what. It's not all that difficult, is it? In fifth gear, what's different? We released what?
1, 2, 3, 4 clutch.
Yeah, we released the 1, 2, 3, 4 clutches. They're no longer transmitting torque. We still are transmitting torque through our input planetary gear set to this housing through the 3-5 reverse clutches. So we're still transferring torque now to our front output sun gear, and we're still transferring torque back to our output carrier. But now the ratio is going to be a little different because the sun gear is a different diameter than the rear output sun gear. So we brought our ratio up a little bit. Then in fifth gear and sixth gear is overdrive on this. We have 2 overdrives. I believe, anyways. Yeah. So looking at sixth gear, what do we do different?
Release 3-5 clutch.
Yep, release that clutch. We still have the 4-5-6 clutches applied, and we're transferring torque to that damper assembly. This, by the way, is called a damper, and it's there to absorb some torsional loads. So it's actually got some clutch lining material in there, and it's immersed in transmission fluid, so it'll absorb some torsional loads. And we're transferring torque right to our carrier. The sun gear is held by the 2-6 clutch, which is applied, and the carrier is going to walk around the sun gear, transferring torque to our output internal gear in an overdrive, ratio. So, pretty simple. And I think that's all I really wanted to talk about here before we go back to work.